Looking at what he said about Piers Morgan, Prince Harry, the thought of Piers Morgan and his band of journalists ear-wagging into my mother's private and sensitive messages in the same way as they have me, and then having given her a nightmare time 3 months prior to her death in Paris, nightmare time is a quote, makes me feel physically sick and even more determined to hold those responsible, including Mr. Morgan, accountable for their vile and entirely unjustified behaviour. He goes on, unfortunately, as a consequence of me bringing my Mirror Group claim, both myself and my wife have been subjected to a barrage of horrific personal attacks and intimidation from Piers Morgan, who was the editor of the Daily Mirror between 1995 and 2004, presumably in retaliation and in the hope that I will back down before being able to hold him properly accountable for his unlawful activity towards both me and my mother during his editorship. Piers Morgan, of course, denies all wrongdoing, and the Mirror Group deny most of the charges against them today. I think he said recently that he was not going to take lectures on privacy invasion from the Duke of Sussex. So my information, I don't know whether this is true or not, but just to give you an idea of how it all works, and therefore how likely it is that any of this will be reported with quite the salaciousness that they reported details of Prince Harry's private life. Remember, this is happening in public. I was told once that Piers Morgan was Paul Dacre's choice to replace him as editor of the Daily Mail. I don't know whether that's true or not, but my source on that was impeccable. What I do know is that Rupert Murdoch offered Paul Dacre the editorship of the Times, which forced the hand of the owner of the Daily Mail into moving Sir David English and putting Paul Dacre in charge of the Daily Mail. But Murdoch wanted him at the Times. When he was at the Daily Mail, he had a deputy editor called Tony Gallagher, who has subsequently gone on to edit the Daily Telegraph, The Sun, and now the Times. So that's 4 newspapers, 2 men. Add Piers Morgan to the mix, who edited both the News of the World and the Daily Mirror. That's 7 newspapers and 3 men, all of whom will be chummy and all of whom will have arrangements in place that ensure that not only if I scratch my back, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but also, of course, that we won't air each other's dirty laundry in public. So Gallagher in particular is fascinating because he's managed to be deputy editor of the Daily Mail, editor of the Daily Telegraph, editor of the Sun, and now editor of the Times. So what will the Times, which is in so many other areas the newspaper of repute, the only newspaper of repute left in this country that's not, ostensibly left-wing, i.e. there's only the Guardian really, and then you've got the FT, which occupies a unique space. So the editor of the Times has already edited the Sun, the Telegraph, and deputy edited the Daily Mail, describing Paul Dacre as, in many ways, his hero. So that's what is meant sometimes when people talk about a sort of almost mafioso nature to the print media in this country. What is the likelihood of any of those men telling the truth about each other's operations, let alone their own? I don't know. Maybe the likelihood is huge. But just in terms of why don't these stories get the coverage you might expect them to get, I thought that might have been a little bit helpful for you. Maybe not. Maybe so, but that's what I'm here for. And we'll find a little bit more from these issues. Here's a good one about Paul Burrell. Do you remember them? Witness statement referred to a 2003 article detailing an alleged row between him and his brother William. You remember him, over their mother's former butler, Paul Burrell. You remember him? He said he hadn't wanted our disagreement about how to handle the situation splashed across the newspapers, and he would have used the phrase two-face bleep as reported, and believes that it was directly lifted from his voicemail. One of the articles put before the trial is a report from The People headlined "Will's seeing Burrell is the only way to stop him selling more Diana secrets. Harry, no, Burrell's a bleep." He said the article accurately sets out the position that my brother was open to fixing a meeting with Paul to discuss his ongoing exposés about our mother. However, I had made up my mind about the kind of person I thought Paul was and was firmly against meeting him at this point in my life. That's what he's been dealing with. That was 20 years ago. I've often expressed to you my complete, well, not bafflement, I know where it comes from, but for ordinary members of the public to have treated these two people like dirt for so long, partly because, of course, she is of mixed race, and partly because he has taken a a flamethrower, really, to the pyramid of deference upon which this country relies. If somebody like him can refuse to, quotes, know his place, end quotes, and go along with whatever he's required to go along with, then how stupid must everybody who hates their life but thinks they have to put up with it further down the pyramid feel? You know, this cult of deference that we have in this country. I understand why the newspapers are terrified of him and attack her as if she was some sort of serial killer. And I understand that a lot of that seeps through into the general public. But 10 seconds on Twitter, and you look at this stuff, and you just wonder what the hell has happened. I thought you cared about Diana, Princess of Wales. I thought she was the Princess of Hearts. That little boy walking behind her coffin all those years ago, and then spends his adult life dealing with the fact, the fear, the knowledge, the suspicion that he was being treated like a, well, you can read it for yourself in the witness statement. We firmly believed that she, my mother, should have expected some privacy in death, especially from someone she had trusted, and we were so upset at the way he was behaving. I didn't want to hear his reasons for it, and his allegation, denied by the Mirror, is that a voicemail message would have been hacked from his phone and made its way into the pages of a national newspaper. One victim of phone hacking blamed a family member, blamed a sister for a really intimate story getting into the newspapers because her sister was the only person that she'd told. And it never crossed her mind that exchanges on voicemail between her and her sister had been listened to by investigators working for newspapers or by newspaper journalists. Just have a think about that for a minute. Your sister is the only person that knows you are, let's say, pregnant. Right? The only person you've told is your sister. And it turns up in a newspaper the next day. So what do you do? Who do you blame? She's the only person you've told. So you check. I mean, did you tell anyone? No, I promise, I swear, of course I didn't tell anyone. You must have told someone. How's it got into the paper? Think about the damage that could do to a relationship. And now, particularly if you're someone who spends a lot of time on social media attacking Prince Harry and his wife, now just think about the possibility, or the allegation, not even the fact, just the possibility that he has spent his entire life at constant risk of that sort of betrayal of trust.